Hi, and welcome to another episode of pianoTV. So, just to finish the discussion on Haydn that we've been having, and you can check on the screen, there's a link to the previous history video that we did on him. I wanted to talk about his most awesome compositions. But since he composed like 1,000 pieces or something like that, probably more, it's really impossible to pick favorites. So instead what I decided to do is divide his music up into categories, and then we're going to talk about those categories today. I'm going to pick like one song from each category to highlight. So we're going to talk about his sonatas, piano trios, symphonies, string quartets, and vocal music. So let's start off with the discussion of his piano sonatas, and he wrote over 60 of them, but not all of them survived. But piano sonatas aren't short works. They're multi-movement works, usually like 3 or 4 movements, and they're generally like 20 plus minutes long. So that's like saying he wrote 60 albums just in like one specific genre. To just, keep in perspective. What I consider to be one of his most impressive sonatas is his last one, the Sonata 52 in E-flat major. This is where he's starting to get more experimental and adventurous with his chords and almost starts leaning in a bit of a Beethoven direction. On this manuscript, Haydn had written in Italian, "Sonata composed for the celebrated Miss Teresa Jansen, by myself Joseph Haydn, in my own hand, London, 1794. Therese was an amazing piano player in London, and because of that, lots of composers dedicated their music to her. So, quick shout out to Women in Music. Haydn wrote nearly 50 piano trios, so that's what I want to talk about next. And most of his amazing piano trios were written in the latter half of his life. So we're going to listen to his piano trio in G major, which is nicknamed Gypsy, and we're going to take a listen to the final movement, the Gypsy Rondo part, which is pretty famous. Now, I really like this because it's super fast, but the version I'm going to show you today that I could get a hold of isn't quite as fast as I generally like. So if you like the sound of this, you should definitely Google different versions of it and see if you can find some super fast versions, because it's just very exhilarating. Haydn wrote a decent amount of concertos for a very diverse array of instruments like the violin and the cello, horns and trumpet, keyboard, the obsolete instrument, the baritone, wind instruments like the flute and oboe, and so on. So concertos are generally super difficult. They're multi-movement works. And the way it works is that you have a soloist who also plays with an instrumental group. So basically, it's an opportunity for the soloist to show off their chops and show off. Since this is a piano channel, I mainly like to focus on keyboard music. So I picked a keyboard concerto to look at. It's his 11th keyboard concerto in D major, and it was written in the 1780s when Haydn was in his early 50s. So you can start to hear the influence that the younger Mozart had on Haydn's music. So the next genre I want to talk about are the string quartets, and Haydn wrote 68 of them. Again, huge numbers, he composed a ton of music. And he not only just wrote a bunch of string quartets, he basically developed and innovated the genre, which is why he's nicknamed the father of the string quartet. Also, he's nicknamed the father of the symphony, but we'll get to that in a moment. So we're going to take a look at the set of his quartets, opus 76, called the Erdődy Quartets. And the one in particular that we're going to look at is his 6th one. But this set of quartets, like a lot of the other music I'm showing you today by Haydn, were written in his golden years, and they really kind of demonstrate the pinnacle of his musical maturity. So the sixth quartet is in E flat major, and it starts off like really nice and chill and relaxing. But about 4 minutes in, we get a fugue. And this was really unusual for Haydn because he rarely ever used fugues. But fugues were something that the newer generation of composers like Beethoven were embracing. It's kind of like how history always repeats itself in cycles, right? So in the Baroque period, fugues were super, super common by guys like Bach. But towards the end of the Baroque period and the beginning of the classical, they fell out of fashion. It was like old hat. But towards the end of the classical era, it started coming back again as trendy. I don't like to use that word, but it was. So let's take a listen to a recording and see if you can pick out the three different parts in the fugue, because a fugue is like different melodies matched up against each other. So let's take a look at symphonies. Now, since Haydn was noted as the father of the symphony, he wrote over 100 of them, again, innovated the genre, and it's impossible to pick just like one symphony to end them all by Haydn. But what I ended up settling on, again, a later years composition, was his 104th symphony, nicknamed the London Symphony, because it was written and premiered in London. The performance must have gone well, because Haydn wrote in his diary, "The whole company was thoroughly pleased, and so was I. I made 4,000 gulden on this evening. Such a thing is only possible in England." Ah, Haydn, always so eager with money. It's a nice chunk of change, though. With some math that was heavily based on James Bolden's "How much did Haydn earn?" essay, that amount would, I think, be the modern day equivalent of about 12,000 American dollars. So the part of the London Symphony that I want to show you today is from the fourth movement, which is based on a Croatian folk song, and it's just super exuberant. Haydn wrote a lot of really awesome and notable vocal works like masses and oratorios and stuff like that, but I don't want to talk about them too much because I like to keep the focus on instrumental music here. But I would be wrong if I didn't at least address his masterpiece, which was an oratorio called The Creation. So this was like a 2-hour sprawling vocal piece that basically detailed the creation story, like the creation of the sun, planets, and the animals, and Adam and Eve and all their adventures. He wrote this massive work in the 1790s, again towards the end of his life, noticing a theme here, when he was in London and he happened to see some of Handel's oratorios, and it really opened up Haydn's eyes. He's like, whoa, this is like a whole different field of music that I never even considered before. I'm super inspired. And then he went and wrote some masterpieces. So we'll take a listen to a clip from The Creation, but it's also worth mentioning that Haydn followed up The Creation with another oratorio, which was equally impressive, and it was called The Seasons. And it basically, these represent the pinnacle of classical oratorios in general. So the excerpt that I'm going to show you is called In Splendor Bright, and it's the part of the oratorio where the sun is created and it rises, which is illustrated by the rising notes of the scale and like the increased power as the notes rise. And that concludes our brief tour through the music of Haydn, what I consider to be some of his standout compositions. So if you want to find like the full versions of these compositions and look at it more in depth, you can just check out the blog post that goes along with this video, and I'll have it all like linked in the description bar below, or you can just go visit pianotv.net and find it like that. Send this video a like if you're a fan of Haydn and history and music, and I assume you're a fan of music if you're watching this video. Anyway, I will catch you guys next time. Haydn wrote a ton of really awesome and notable